The blind date was already going wrong when the woman said, "You don't recognize me." Owen Mitchell looked up from his phone. Expensive suit. Red blazer. Crying. "Should I? 28 years ago, you made me a promise. In the woods. After my mom said she didn't want custody." Her hand shook. "You said you'd find me when we grew up. That we'd both be okay." His blood went cold. That girl had been 10. Maeve Stevens. He'd looked for her for years. "You're not her. I am. And your grandmother paid mine to make sure you'd finally show up." His grandmother had been dead for 3 days. Family, welcome back to our channel, where we bring you emotional stories of love. Because in truth, love and death cannot be escaped. No one can say when, how, or where. It's never too early or too late. If you're new to this channel, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification button right now so you don't miss what happens next. And if you're one of our returning viewers, thank you so much. We appreciate you. Now, stay with us to the end of this story. Leave a comment with your thoughts and like this video. Let's continue. 3 days earlier, Owen had been standing in his grandmother's hospital room when she'd gripped his wrist with surprising strength. "The reservations for Thursday." Her voice barely carried over the heart monitor beep. 7:30. Lou Bernardine. "Don't you dare cancel. Grandma." Blind date. Already set up. Eleanor Thompson's granddaughter. Nice girl. Therapist. "You need someone who understands broken things." He'd tried to argue. She'd closed her eyes, exhausted from the effort of speaking. Gone before morning. So here he was, honoring a dead woman's final wish because guilt was a more powerful motivator than any board meeting. He'd arrived early. Scanned the restaurant. Understated wealth, the kind of place where a single appetizer cost more than most people's car payments. He'd worn the navy suit, left the tie in the car. Tried to look approachable instead of like a man whose schedule was measured in 15-minute increments. The hostess led him to a table by the windows. City lights stretched 40 stories below. He ordered scotch, neat, and checked his phone. 37 unread emails since leaving the office. Owen Mitchell. He looked up. She stood beside the table in that red blazer, black dress underneath. Natural hair framing her face in soft curls. Pearl earrings. Understated makeup. Her hands clutched a small black purse like it might escape. Pretty. That was his first thought. Second thought, nervous. Third, something about her eyes made his chest tighten in a way he couldn't name. Maeve Johnson. She didn't extend her hand. Just stood there frozen. He rose, defaulted to business mode. "Please sit. Can I order you? I need to tell you something." The words came fast. "Before we sit. Before we do this whole thing." Red flag. Every instinct honed by years of negotiation screamed at him to make an excuse, leave, send flowers tomorrow with an apology. But she looked terrified. Not scheming. Actually terrified. "Okay." He stayed standing. She took a breath. Let it out slow. "Your grandmother didn't tell you my maiden name." She said Eleanor Thompson's granddaughter. "That's my grandmother. She remarried after my grandfather died. Thompson's her current name. But she was Eleanor Stevens before that." The name hit him sideways. Stevens. He knew that name. "When I was 10, Maeve continued, her voice steadier now, "my parents divorced. Bad. Really bad. My mom had been having an affair for 2 years. My dad found out, everything exploded. I was..." She stopped. Swallowed hard. "I was a mess. My dad sent me to this camp in Vermont that summer. Thought it would help. Get me away from the court battles and the fights." Owen's scotch sat untouched on the table. His hand had gone numb. There was this boy there. Maeve's eyes met his. 12 years old. Tall for his age. Always reading Stephen King books. He found me crying in the woods one day because I'd overheard my mom on the phone saying she didn't want custody. That I was too much work. The memory surfaced like something underwater breaking the surface. Sharp. Sudden. so vivid he could smell the pine trees. A girl, small for 10, dark braids, huge eyes, crying so hard she couldn't catch her breath. You sat with me for 3 hours, Maeve said. Missed the evening campfire. Missed dinner. You just sat there. Let me cry. And when I finally stopped, you said, "When we grow up," Owen heard himself say, his voice strange in his own ears, "I'll find you again. We'll both be okay by then." Maeve's hand went to her throat. You remember. He couldn't speak. His mind was pulling up fragments, her showing him her secret fort in the woods, the way she'd taught him to identify bird calls, how they'd written their names on a tree trunk with a permanent marker. Maeve Stevens and Owen Mitchell, friends forever. 2 weeks together. The best 2 weeks of that whole summer. Then camp ended. He went home to Connecticut. She went home to, he couldn't remember where. Philadelphia, maybe. They'd promised to write. Never did. Kids forget. Life moves on. Your grandmother tracked me down. Maeve's voice pulled him back to the present. Called my grandmother 6 months ago. Said her grandson needed to meet someone who understood that success doesn't fix childhood wounds. That he was turning into the kind of man who measured worth by the balance sheet. Owen's jaw tightened. That sounded exactly like something his grandmother would say. I didn't know it was you, Maeve continued. Not until 2 weeks ago when she sent me your photo. To make sure I recognized you at the restaurant. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. I almost didn't come. Thought maybe you wouldn't remember. Or you'd remember and regret making that stupid promise. I don't regret it. The words came out before he'd thought them through. Maeve's eyes glistened. She blinked fast. The hostess approached, clearly confused about why they were still standing. Should I give your table away? No. Owen and Maeve said it simultaneously. They sat. For 30 seconds, neither spoke. Owen's hands rested on the white tablecloth. Maeve studied her menu like it contained the answers to questions she hadn't asked yet. Dr. Maeve Johnson, Owen said finally. Child psychologist. You looked me up. My grandmother mentioned the therapist part. I filled in the rest. He paused. You work at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Specializing in trauma. Published 3 papers on adverse childhood experiences. Quoted in the New York Times last year about the foster care system. You did more than fill in the rest. I research all my business meetings. This isn't a business meeting. No. He reached for his scotch, finally took a sip. It's considerably more complicated. Maeve set down her menu. I help kids survive what we survived. Different specifics, same core wound. The feeling that the adults who were supposed to protect you couldn't be trusted to do their jobs. The waiter appeared. They ordered. Maeve chose the halibut, Owen the steak, and the interaction gave them both a moment to breathe. When the waiter left, Owen leaned forward slightly. Your last name changed. My mom remarried when I was 13. Steve Johnson. Good man. Wanted to adopt me. My dad was. He'd checked out by then. Too broken by the divorce. Signed away his rights without a fight. She traced the rim of her water glass. Steve gave me stability. A home that wasn't a war zone. I took his name because it felt like starting over. Maeve Stevens died. Maeve Stevens was a terrified little girl who thought she ruined her parents' marriage. Yeah. She died. I let her. Owen's chest ached. He recognized that particular flavor of survival. Killing off the broken parts of yourself to move forward. You built an empire, Maeve said, shifting the focus. Real estate, tech investments. I read Forbes' profile on you. The boy who read Stephen King grew up to be the man who bets millions on educated risks. The boy who read Stephen King grew up to be the man who doesn't sleep well. He didn't know why he said it. He never admitted weakness. Not to business partners, not to the women he dated briefly before they got tired of coming second to his work schedule. But Maeve just nodded. Like she understood completely. Neither do I, she said quietly. Nightmares. 3, maybe 4 times a week. Always variations on the same theme. Standing in my childhood home, trying to get my parents' attention. They look right through me. Mine are about showing up to help a kid and finding an empty room. No matter how fast I run, I'm always too late. The city lights blurred slightly. Owen blinked. When had the last time been that someone asked him a real question? When had he last given a real answer? Your grandmother, Maeve said. She told me you work 80-hour weeks. That you live in a penthouse that echoes. That the last woman you dated left because you forgot her birthday 3 years running. She say anything else? That you're terrified of becoming your father. Owen's hand tightened around his glass. His father, another successful businessman who'd measured his worth in acquisitions until the day he died at 62 of a stress-induced heart attack. Alone in his office on a Sunday. She wasn't wrong, he managed. My grandmother told me I use work as armor. Maeve's smile was sad. That I've been in exactly 2 relationships in the last decade, both with men who were emotionally unavailable because that felt safer than risking actual intimacy. Were they wrong? No. Their food arrived. They ate in silence for a few minutes. The halibut was perfect. The steak melted on his tongue. He barely tasted either. Maeve set down her fork first. This is insane. You know that, right? Our grandmothers orchestrated a blind date based on a promise 2 traumatized kids made nearly 3 decades ago. Completely insane. We're adults now. Different people. That promise doesn't mean anything. It doesn't, Owen agreed. But neither of them moved to leave. Maeve's hand rested on the table between them. Owen looked at it. Elegant fingers, short practical nails, a thin scar across her knuckles. How'd you get the scar? He asked. She glanced down, surprised. Broke up a fight between 2 kids at a group home. One had a piece of broken plastic. Caught my hand when I got between them. You stepped between a kid with a weapon and another kid. That's my job. That's not your job. Your job is therapy. Not getting stabbed. Sometimes they're the same thing. She met his eyes. You'd understand if you still remembered that kid who sat with a crying girl for 3 hours instead of leaving her alone in the woods. The sentence hung between them. Owen's phone buzzed. He glanced at it reflexively. Emergency board meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning. A deal going sideways. Millions on the line. He silenced the phone. Put it face down on the table. I do remember that kid, he said quietly. I just haven't seen him in a long time. Maeve's expression softened. Maybe that's what your grandmother wanted. For you to find him again. And yours. Wanted me to stop hiding behind children's pain and deal with my own. The check arrived. Owen paid without discussion. They stood, collected coats from the hostess. Walked toward the elevator in silence. Outside, the October air bit cold. Maeve wrapped her coat tighter. Can I? Owen started, then stopped. What was he asking? To see her again? To turn a blind date orchestrated by dead grandmothers into something real? I walk, Maeve said. It's only 12 blocks. At night. It's Philadelphia. I'm careful. I'll walk with you. She started to protest, saw his expression, nodded instead. They walked in silence for the first 2 blocks. City sounds surrounded them. Cars honking, sirens in the distance, people laughing outside bars. What happened to that tree? Owen asked suddenly. The one we carved our names on? Maeve's breath caught. You remember that? I remember a lot now. It's coming back. Hurricane took it down when I was 15. My dad told me. Before he stopped calling. I'm sorry. Don't be. The tree dying felt symbolic. Like the universe releasing us from that promise. They stopped at a crosswalk. Waited for the light. What if I don't want to be released? Owen asked. Maeve turned to look at him fully. Owen. I'm not saying we pick up where we left off as kids. I'm saying maybe our grandmothers were smarter than we're giving them credit for. Smart enough to know we're both disasters when it comes to relationships. Smart enough to know we might be less disaster-prone together. The light changed. They crossed. This is me. Maeve stopped in front of a brownstone, well-maintained, flower boxes in the windows despite the season. Third floor. Owen looked up at the building, then back at her. Can I see you again? You live in New York. I have a car. You have a billion-dollar company to run. I have a schedule I control. Maeve studied him for a long moment. Why? Why what? Why do you want to see me again? Because of who I am now, or because of who I was when we were kids? It was a fair question. Owen thought about it, really thought about it. Tonight, he said slowly, was the first time in 5 years I've had a conversation where I didn't think about work once, where I didn't calculate the value of every word, where I just talked, and someone actually listened. Maeve's eyes glistened again. That's the trauma therapist in me. That's you. She pulled out her phone. Give me your number. He did. She texted him immediately. A simple, "This is Maeve. I'm not promising anything," she said. "I don't do promises anymore. They break too easily." "Neither do I." "Good. Then we're both liars, because we made one when we were kids and here we are 28 years later, keeping it whether we meant to or not." Owen laughed. Actually laughed. The sound surprised him. Maeve smiled. There he is. The boy who promised. She turned toward her building, then paused. Looked back. "For what it's worth," she said, "I'm glad you found me. Even if it took 3 decades and 2 manipulative grandmothers to make it happen." "For what it's worth," Owen replied. "Me too." She went inside. He waited until he saw a light flip on in a third-floor window, then walked back toward where he'd parked his car. His phone buzzed. The board meeting. The deal. The empire that needed managing. He looked at Maeve's text message instead. "This is Maeve." 3 words. But they felt like the beginning of something that scared him more than any business risk he'd ever taken. He saved her contact. Walked to his car. Drove back to New York with his mind full of childhood promises and a woman in a red blazer who'd seen straight through the armor he'd spent decades building. When he got home to his penthouse, he didn't check his emails. He pulled out his phone and texted back. "Sleep well. I'll call you tomorrow." Her response came 3 minutes later. "I won't hold you to that promise." He smiled in the darkness of his apartment that suddenly felt less empty. "Good. Because I intend to keep it anyway." Family, if you watched this story up to this point, it means it moved you. Leave your thoughts and tell me where you are watching from in the comment, and make sure to like and hit the subscribe button if you haven't. Smash the hype button now if you found value in this content. It really helps my channel. Over the next 3 weeks, Owen kept his promise. He called the next morning. Then the morning after that. By the end of the first week, they'd fallen into a rhythm. 7 a.m., before her first patient, before his first meeting. 20 minutes of conversation that felt stolen from the demands of their lives. He learned she drank her coffee black with too much sugar. That she'd grown up listening to Mary J. Blige and Jill Scott. Had a collection of vinyl records she played on Sunday mornings. That she cooked elaborate meals when she was stressed. Gumbo jambalaya, her stepfather's version of smothered chicken that took 3 hours but tasted like comfort. She learned he ran 5 miles every morning at 5 a.m. because sitting still made his mind race. That he'd read every Stephen King novel twice. That he kept a photograph of his grandmother on his desk at work, the only personal item in an office designed to intimidate. The third week, he drove down on a Friday evening. They met at Reading Terminal Market. Maeve wore jeans and a sweater. Her natural hair pulled back in a low puff. She looked younger without the professional armor, softer. "This is my grandmother's favorite place," she said, leading him through the crowded market. "She brought me here every Saturday when I was a kid. Said if you couldn't find what you needed here, you didn't need it." The market hummed with life, vendors calling out specials, the smell of fresh bread mixing with roasted chicken and Bassett's ice cream. Maeve navigated like she'd memorized the layout decades ago. She stopped at a Amish stand, ordered soft pretzels for both of them. Handed one to Owen still warm, salt crystals catching the light. "My comfort food," she explained. "Bad day at work, good day at work, doesn't matter." These fix everything temporarily. Owen bit into his. The dough melted on his tongue. I can see why. They walked slowly, no destination. Maeve pointed out her favorite vendors, the man who sold kettle corn and remembered everyone's names, the woman at the flower stand who'd given her free tulips the day her stepfather died. Tell me about him, Owen said. Steve Johnson. Maeve's expression shifted. Not sad exactly. Wistful. He was a teacher. High school history. Met my mom at a parent-teacher conference. She was volunteering. He was supervising the event. He saw this angry, closed-off 13-year-old who wouldn't talk to anyone, and he just kept showing up. Drove me to school every morning, asked about my day, didn't push when I gave one-word answers. They stopped to let a group of tourists pass. Took him 8 months before I actually talked to him. Really talked. I'd failed a test on purpose because I was mad at my mom about something stupid. He sat me down, looked me right in the eyes, and said, I see you punishing yourself, sweetheart. That's not going to fix what's broken. Owen's chest tightened. Smart man. The smartest. He died when I was 32. Heart attack. Sudden. She blinked hard. I was with a patient when the hospital called. This 7-year-old girl whose father had abandoned her family. I held it together through the session, drove to the hospital, and fell apart in the parking lot. I'm sorry. Don't be. I got 13 good years with him. Some kids never get that. They continued walking. Owen bought them both coffee from a vendor who flirted shamelessly with Maeve. Clearly a regular. She laughed. Comfortable here in a way he'd never seen anyone comfortable in his world of polished conference rooms and calculated interactions. Your turn, Maeve said as they found a spot to sit near the market center. Tell me about your grandmother. Owen wrapped his hands around his coffee cup. Eleanor Mitchell. Toughest woman I've ever known. Raised me after my mom died when I was 8. Pancreatic cancer. Fast. And your father. Worked. That's what he did. That's all he did. My grandmother basically moved in, took over, gave me structure. She's the reason I didn't fall apart completely. She never remarried. Never even dated that I know of. She said she'd already had her great love. My grandfather died in Vietnam before I was born. She kept his photo on her nightstand for 54 years. Maeve's hand found his on the table. The touch was light, barely there, but it sent electricity through his nervous system. That kind of love, she said quietly. It changes your understanding of what's possible. Or what you're capable of surviving. Their eyes held. The market noise faded into background static. I'm scared, Maeve admitted. Of this. Whatever this is. Me too. I don't do relationships well. I pick emotionally unavailable men because I know they won't stay. Can't be disappointed if you never expect permanence. Owen's thumb traced circles on her knuckles without his conscious decision. I don't do relationships at all. 3 failed attempts, all ending the same way. You're married to your work. There's no room for anyone else. Were they wrong? No. I made sure they weren't wrong. Easier to blame the work than admit I was terrified of letting anyone close enough to leave. A child's laughter cut through their moment. They both looked over, a little girl, maybe 4, twirling in circles while her father chased her, both giggling. Maeve's expression softened. That's why I do what I do. Those moments. Making sure kids get to have them even when everything else is falling apart. How many patients do you see a week? 25 to 30. Depends. I keep emergency slots open for crisis interventions. That's a lot of trauma to carry, says the man who manages billion-dollar investments and hasn't slept through the night in 5 years. Fair point. They finished their coffee. Maeve checked her phone, frowned slightly. What's wrong? One of my kids. She's in foster care, keeps running away. The family's threatening to send her back to the group home if she does it again. Owen watched her face shift, the weight settling in her shoulders, the way her jaw tightened. How old? 12. The same age he'd been when he'd found Maeve crying in the woods. You're going to call her, he said. Not a question. I'm going to call her. Do you do that often? Take calls on Friday night from patients. When they need me. She met his eyes, defensive. It's not about boundaries. It's about showing up. I'm not criticizing. I'm asking. Her shoulders relaxed slightly. Yes. I take calls at night. On weekends. Whenever. Because these kids don't have anyone else who shows up consistently. And I refuse to be another adult who promises to be there and then disappears when it's inconvenient. There it was. The wound underneath the competence. The reason she specialized in childhood trauma. Because she'd survived it. Call her, Owen said. I'll wait. Maeve looked at him for a long moment. You'll be bored. I'll survive. She stepped away, phone pressed to her ear. Owen watched her pace, her free hand gesturing as she talked. 5 minutes became 10. 10 became 15. When she came back, her eyes were red but her expression was lighter. She's okay. Scared. But okay. The foster mother's going to let her stay if she promises to talk before running next time. You convinced them? I reminded them that 12-year-olds don't run because they're bad kids. They run because running feels safer than staying and being hurt again. Owen stood, pulled her into his arms without thinking. She went rigid for half a second, then melted against his chest. You're good at this, he said into her hair. At what? Caring. Even when it hurts. She pulled back just enough to look up at him. So are you. I run companies. Make money. That's not caring. You drove 2 hours to walk around a market with me on a Friday night when you could have been closing deals. You waited 15 minutes while I talked down a scared 12-year-old. You paid attention when I talked about my stepfather even though it made you uncomfortable because grief makes everyone uncomfortable. That's not. That's caring, Owen. You're just out of practice with people who aren't employees or business partners. The truth of it settled in his chest. Uncomfortable. Accurate. Come on, Maeve said, taking his hand. I'm cooking dinner. Her apartment was exactly what he'd expected. Bookshelves covering every wall, plants in every window, art from her patients taped to the refrigerator. A worn leather couch that looked like it had been loved for decades. Framed photographs covering one wall. Her with her grandmother, her stepfather, colleagues, kids she'd worked with whose faces were blurred for privacy but whose joy was evident. No television. Just a record player in the corner and wooden crates full of vinyl. Make yourself comfortable, Maeve said, already pulling ingredients from the refrigerator. And don't offer to help. This is my therapy. Owen settled on the couch, watched her move around the small kitchen. She'd put on music, Jill Scott, The Way, and was chopping onions with the precision of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Smothered chicken, he asked. You remembered. I remember everything you tell me. She glanced over her shoulder, smiled. Dangerous habit. He picked up a book from her coffee table. The Body Keeps the Score. Trauma Therapy Manual. He flipped through it, saw notes in the margins in her handwriting. His phone buzzed. He ignored it. It buzzed again. And again. You can check that, Maeve called from the kitchen. It can wait. Owen. The 4th buzz means it's important. He pulled out his phone. 7 missed calls. 12 texts. All from his CFO. Singapore deal falling apart. Need you on call now. He stood, walked to the kitchen doorway. Maeve was seasoning the chicken, hadn't looked up. I have to. Go handle it. She still didn't look up. It's okay. But her voice had changed. Cooler. Distant. Maeve. Seriously. Go. I understand. She didn't understand. She understood completely, and that was the problem. Owen made a decision that would have horrified his board. He texted back. Handle it. I trust your judgment. Brief me Monday. Put the phone away. Maeve had stopped moving. Stood completely still, the seasoned chicken forgotten on the cutting board. What did you just do? She asked quietly. Told them to handle it. It's Singapore. You said that deal was worth $50 million. Give or take. She turned to face him fully. And you just told someone else to handle it. I did. Why? Because standing in this kitchen, watching you cook, felt more important than $50 million. Because the smell of onions and seasoning and old vinyl filled something in him that money never had. Because you looked at me like I might be worth more than my bank balance. Because I made a promise, he said instead, to have dinner with you. And I'm tired of breaking promises. Maeve's eyes glistened. She turned back to the stove quickly, but not before he saw her wipe her cheek. They didn't talk about the text. She finished cooking. He set the table with mismatched plates she'd collected from thrift stores. They ate smothered chicken with rice and collard greens while Jill Scott gave way to Mary J. Blige, and neither checked their phones once. It was the best meal Owen had eaten in years. After dinner, they sat on her couch. Close but not touching. The distance felt electric. Tell me something, Maeve said. Something you've never told anyone else. Owen thought about deflecting. Giving her something safe. But she'd been brave first. Had admitted fear in the market. Had let him see her grief over her stepfather. Her worry for her patients. I can't remember my mother's voice, he said. I have videos. Recordings. But in my actual memory, there's just silence. Sometimes I panic that I'm forgetting her entirely. That one day I'll look at her photos and not even recognize her face. Maeve's hand found his in the space between them. I can't remember my father sober, she said quietly. After the divorce, he drank. Every memory I have of him from age 11 on involves him being drunk. Slurring words. Forgetting my birthday. I've tried so hard to find one clear memory of him before everything fell apart, and I can't. It's like he was erased. They sat in the silence of shared wounds. We're a mess, Owen said finally. Spectacular disasters. Our grandmothers were insane to think this would work. Completely delusional. But neither let go of the other's hand. Hours later, when Owen finally stood to leave, Maeve walked him to the door. Drive safe, she said. I will. Text me when you get home. That's 2 hours from now. I'll be awake. He cupped her face. Gentle. Giving her time to pull away. She didn't pull away. The kiss was soft. Tentative. Like they were both terrified of breaking something fragile. When they separated, Maeve's breathing had changed. This is happening, she said. Not quite a question. If you want it to. I'm terrified. Me too. Good. She smiled, still scared but choosing bravery anyway. Then we're evenly matched. Owen drove home at midnight with his phone on silent and his mind full of a woman who'd seen every broken piece of him and hadn't run. When he got home, he texted. Made it. You still awake? Her response came immediately. Reading. Couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about you. His heart did something strange in his chest. Good thoughts or bad thoughts? Dangerous thoughts. He smiled in the darkness of his penthouse that didn't echo quite as loudly anymore. Me too. That fall turned into winter without either of them quite noticing the shift. Owen started keeping a bag in his car. Toothbrush, change of clothes, laptop. He'd leave New York Friday afternoon, work from Maeve's couch while she saw her last patients of the day. They'd cook dinner together, talk until late, fall asleep on her couch watching old movies neither paid attention to. He never stayed the night. Always drove home around midnight, no matter how much his body protested the late drive. Maeve never asked him to stay. Never pushed for more than he offered. It should have felt perfect. Safe. Manageable. It felt like waiting for the other shoe to drop. The first crack appeared in December. Owen had promised to spend the weekend. He'd blocked out his calendar, rescheduled 3 meetings, told his assistant he was unavailable unless the building was literally on fire. Thursday night, his CFO called. Tokyo office just lost the Yamamoto account. $60 million. The client's flying to New York tomorrow for a face-to-face before deciding whether to pull all their investments. Owen stood in his apartment, already half-packed. Send them the retention proposal we worked up last month. They want to meet with you specifically. That's non-negotiable. I'm not available tomorrow. Silence on the other end. His CFO had worked with him for 8 years. Owen was never unavailable. Owen, this is $60 million. If they pull out, 3 other clients will follow. We could be looking at $200 million in losses. His chest tightened. What time's the meeting? 10 a.m. Could run until 3 or 4 depending on negotiations. He could still make it to Philadelphia by evening. Late, but he'd be there. Schedule it. He texted Maeve, running late tomorrow. Work crisis. I'll be there by 7. Her response came an hour later. No problem. Drive safe. Short. Professional. He told himself he was imagining the distance. The meeting ran until 6. Owen walked out with the account secured, but his nerves frayed. He'd missed 4 calls from Maeve. When he called back, it went to voicemail. He tried again from the car. Still voicemail. Traffic was a nightmare. Accident on I-95, everything backed up for miles. He sat in gridlock watching the time tick past 7. Past 8. Past 9. He texted, I'm so sorry. Still in traffic. Should be there by 10. No response. When he finally pulled up to her building at 10:40, the lights in her apartment were off. He sat in his car, hands on the steering wheel, and understood. She'd given up waiting. He called. It rang once, then went to voicemail. She'd declined the call. Owen pressed his forehead against the steering wheel. The exhaustion of the day crashed into him all at once. The meeting, the traffic, the constant pressure of holding everything together. His phone buzzed. A text from Maeve. I'm not mad. I'm tired. We'll talk tomorrow. He texted back, I'm outside. Can we talk now? 3 minutes passed. Then 5. The building door opened. Maeve stood there in sweatpants and a Howard University hoodie. No makeup, her hair wrapped in a silk scarf. She looked young and tired and heartbreakingly familiar. She walked to his car. He got out. You should go home, she said. It's late. You've been driving and working all day. I promised I'd be here. You were here. Just 7 hours later than you said. Maeve. I'm not mad, she repeated, but her voice cracked. I'm really not. I know work is important. I know these things happen. But this is the 4th time in 2 months you've been late. And the 2nd time you've canceled completely. He wanted to argue. But she wasn't wrong. The kids I work with, Maeve continued, her arms wrapped around herself against the cold. They've all been promised things by adults who didn't follow through. I'll be at your school play. I'll pick you up on time. I'll be there. And then the adults don't show up. Or they show up hours late. And the kids learn that promises don't mean anything. I'm not one of your patients. No. You're someone I'm falling in love with. Which somehow makes it worse. The words hung between them. First time either had said it out loud. Owen's heart hammered against his ribs. You're falling in love with me? Of course I am. Why do you think this hurts so much? Her eyes glistened in the streetlight. I knew better. I knew what I was getting into. But I did it anyway because that 12-year-old boy made a promise and some stupid part of me believed the 40-year-old man would be different from every other person who's let me down. I'm here now. You're always here eventually. That's not the same as being here when you say you'll be here. A car drove past. Someone laughed in a nearby apartment. The world continued while Owen felt his fracturing. What do you want me to do? He asked. Walk away from my company? Stop doing the work that built everything I have. I want you to figure out what matters more. Because you can't have both. Not at this level of intensity. That's not fair. None of this is fair. Maeve's voice rose slightly. It's not fair that I work with traumatized children all week and then spend my weekends waiting for you to show up. It's not fair that you've built this massive life that demands everything from you and leaves nothing for anyone else. It's not fair that 2 people who should work perfectly together can't figure out how to make space for each other. So what? We just give up. I don't know. She wiped her eyes roughly. I don't know. I need to think. Maeve. Go home, Owen. Please. We're both too tired for this conversation. She turned toward her building. I love you too, he said to her back. She stopped. Didn't turn around. That doesn't fix anything, she said quietly. Love without showing up is just words. She went inside. Owen stood on the empty street until the cold seeped through his coat. Then he drove back to New York with his chest hollow and his mind replaying every late arrival, every canceled plan, every time he'd chosen the safe option of work over the terrifying option of her. He didn't call for 3 days. Neither did she. On the 4th day, his assistant buzzed him. There's a Dr. Johnson here to see you. Says she doesn't have an appointment but it's important. Owen's heart stopped. Send her in. Maeve walked into his office in her work clothes. Tailored pants, blouse, heels that clicked on his marble floor. She looked around at the floor-to-ceiling windows, the modern art, the desk that cost more than most people's cars. This is where you live, she said. This is where I work. Is there a difference? He didn't have an answer. She set her purse down, stayed standing. I had a patient session this morning. 14-year-old girl. Foster care. She's been in 7 homes in 3 years. Keeps getting sent back because she acts out. Owen waited. She told me today that she acts out on purpose. Because if she gets sent back, she's the one making the choice. She's the one with control. Better to push people away than wait for them to leave. Maeve. I realized I do the same thing. I date men who are emotionally unavailable because then I'm never surprised when they don't show up. I keep my patients at arm's length emotionally because caring too much means it hurts more when I can't save them. I told you I was scared of this, of us, and then I used your first real mistake as an excuse to push you away before you could leave first. She took a breath, met his eyes. So I'm here. In your world. Seeing what demands so much from you. And I need you to help me understand if there's any space in this for me. For us. Or if I'm asking you to be someone you're not. Owen came around his desk. Stood in front of her without touching. 6 months ago, he said, I worked 7 days a week. I measured success by my net worth. I fell asleep at my desk more often than in my own bed. And I was the loneliest I'd ever been. And now I drive to Philadelphia every weekend because being near you feels more important than any deal I could close. I delegate work I used to micromanage because I want Friday nights free. I keep your photo on my phone and look at it between meetings like a lovesick teenager. But you still choose work when it conflicts. Because I don't know how not to. It's what I'm good at. What I understand. People. Relationships. I fail at those. You didn't fail with me. You just defaulted to old patterns when things got hard. So did you. She nodded. So did I. They stood in his massive office with its view of Manhattan and its temperature-controlled perfection, and Owen realized the space felt as empty as his penthouse used to. I can't promise I'll get it right every time, he said. I'll be late sometimes. I'll have emergencies. There will be conflicts. I know. But I can promise that you matter more than my schedule. That I'll try. That when I mess up, I'll own it instead of making excuses. I can promise the same. That I'll tell you when I'm scared instead of pushing you away. That I'll remember you're not the people who abandoned me when I was a kid. That I'll try too. So what do we do? Maeve stepped closer. Close enough that he could smell her perfume. Something with vanilla and warmth. We start over. Again. As many times as it takes until we get it right. Owen pulled her into his arms. She wrapped hers around his waist, pressed her face against his chest. I'm sorry, he said into her hair. For being late. For making you wait. I'm sorry for comparing you to every person who's ever let me down. You're not them. I'm sorry it took you driving 2 hours to my office for us to have this conversation. She pulled back, smiled up at him. I'm not. I needed to see this place. Understand what competes for your attention. And It's impressive. But it's not worth losing you over. His phone buzzed on his desk. He didn't even glance at it. I'm taking tomorrow off, he said. And the day after. And I'm spending them in Philadelphia with you doing nothing productive. Your CFO will have a heart attack. My CFO can handle it. Owen. I mean it. You were right. I can't have both at this level of intensity. So I'm choosing you, us, figuring out how to build something that doesn't require sacrifice of everything else. Maeve's eyes searched his face. You're sure? Terrified. But sure. She kissed him then. Not soft or tentative like before. Deep. Sure. Like she was claiming something she'd almost lost. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Maeve smiled. Take me to lunch. Somewhere wildly inappropriate for a business lunch. I know just the place. He grabbed his coat, told his assistant to clear his afternoon, and walked out of his office holding Maeve's hand like it was the only thing anchoring him to earth. Behind them, his phone continued to buzz. He didn't look back. The following weeks felt like learning to breathe in a new rhythm. Owen hired a COO, something his board had been suggesting for years. He delegated the Singapore office to his VP of International Operations. He started leaving work at 6 instead of 9. The company didn't collapse. Shockingly, it thrived. Maeve started saying no to emergency calls after 8 p.m. unless a child was in active crisis. She hired a practice partner to share on-call duties. She kept Saturdays sacred. No patients, no work emails. They both felt guilty. Both fought the instinct to slide back into old patterns. But slowly, space opened up. Owen started staying over on Friday nights. Then Saturday nights too. Maeve gave him a drawer in her dresser, space in her medicine cabinet, keys to her apartment. He brought over his French press and his expensive coffee because she refused to admit her cheap grocery store brand tasted like burnt water. She introduced him to Sunday morning vinyl sessions, cleaning the apartment while Etta James or Otis Redding filled the rooms. It felt domestic, real, terrifying. 2 months into their reset, Maeve's phone rang during breakfast. She glanced at the screen, and her entire body went rigid. Who is it? Owen asked. My father. She hadn't mentioned her father in weeks. Owen had assumed he was out of the picture permanently. You don't have to answer. But she did. Put the phone to her ear, her hand trembling slightly. Hello. Pause. No, this is fine. Longer pause. When? Her face drained of color. I don't know. She looked at Owen lost. Can I call you back? She hung up. My father's in the hospital. Heart attack. He's asking for me. Owen reached across the table, took her hand. Where? Pittsburgh. He moved there 7 years ago. I didn't even know. Do you want to go? I don't know what I want. Her voice cracked. He hasn't called me in 10 years. 10 years, Owen. And now he's dying and suddenly I matter. You always mattered. He just couldn't see it through his own pain. Don't. She pulled her hand away. Don't make excuses for him. You sound like me with my patience. Understanding why someone hurts you doesn't make it hurt less. Fair point. Maeve stood, paced to the window. Philadelphia morning light cut across her face. I spent years in therapy dealing with him, she said. The abandonment, the drinking, the way he just checked out of my life. I made peace with never having him back. And now he's asking for me and I don't know how to do this. What would you tell one of your patients? She turned, gave him a look. That's not fair. It's exactly fair. What would you tell a kid dealing with a parent who abandoned them? Maeve was silent for a long moment. I'd tell them they don't owe that parent forgiveness. But they might need closure. That seeing them one last time isn't for the parent. It's for the kid who's still carrying the wound. So I hate that you're right. She grabbed her phone. I need to call the hospital. Find out how bad it is. While she talked to nurses and doctors, Owen made the decision for both of them. He texted his assistant. cancel my week. Personal emergency. Packed an overnight bag from the drawer Maeve had given him. Pulled up directions to Pittsburgh on his phone. When Maeve hung up, looking shell-shocked, he was ready. "We're leaving in 20 minutes, he said. "Owen, you don't have to." "I know. I'm doing it anyway." Something in her face crumpled. She nodded. They drove to Pittsburgh in heavy silence. Maeve stared out the window, barely spoke. Owen let the quiet sit, didn't try to fill it with meaningless comfort. 3 hours later, they pulled up to UPMC Mercy Hospital. Maeve hadn't moved from the parking lot for 10 minutes. "I can't do this," she whispered. "You can." What if he's still the same? What if he's drunk even now? What if seeing him destroys everything I've built? Owen took her hand. "Then we leave. And we deal with it together. But you'll know. And not knowing is worse." She looked at him. "When did you get so wise about emotions?" "I have an excellent therapist." She almost smiled. Almost. They walked into the hospital together. Took the elevator to the cardiac unit. Approached the nurse's station. "I'm here to see David Stevens," Maeve said, her voice steady through sheer force of will. The nurse checked her chart. "Room 314. Are you family?" "I'm his daughter." Something in the nurse's expression softened. "He's been asking for you. Go on in." Maeve's hand tightened around Owen's. "Come with me." "Are you sure?" "Please." They walked down the hall. Stopped outside room 314. Through the small window, Owen could see an older man in the hospital bed. Thin. Gray. Nothing like the father Maeve probably remembered from childhood. Maeve pushed open the door. David Stevens looked up. His eyes, the same dark brown as Maeve's, filled immediately with tears. "Maeve." His voice was rough, damaged by years of drinking. "You came. You had a heart attack. Massive. Doctors say I'm lucky to be alive." He coughed. "Though I'm not sure luck has anything to do with it. More like my body finally caught up with decades of abuse." Maeve stood frozen by the door. Owen stayed close but gave her space. "Why did you call me?" she asked. "Because I'm dying. And I have things I need to say before I run out of time to say them." "You had years to say things. You chose not to." "I did. You're right. I was a coward." He shifted in the bed, winced. "After your mom left, I couldn't look at you without seeing everything I'd failed at. You had her eyes. Her smile. Every time I saw you, I was reminded that I wasn't enough to make her stay. So you drank. So I drank. And then I drank more. And then one day I looked up and you were 16 and getting into college and I'd missed everything. Every birthday, every graduation, every moment that mattered." Tears streamed down his face. He didn't wipe them away. "When Steve adopted you, when you took his name, I told myself it was better that way. You had a real father. Someone who showed up. I didn't deserve to be part of your life anymore." "You didn't deserve to make that choice for me," Maeve said, her voice breaking. "You didn't get to decide I was better off without you. I needed my father. And you just left." "I know. No. You don't know. You don't know what it's like to be a kid whose parent chooses alcohol over them. You don't know what it's like to grow up believing you're not worth staying sober for. You don't know what that does to a person." David closed his eyes. "You're right. I don't know because I was too busy drowning to notice who I was taking down with me." Owen watched Maeve struggle, anger and grief and that terrible childhood hope warring in her expression. "I'm sober now," David said quietly. 7 years. Not that it matters. I know it doesn't undo anything. But I wanted you to know I finally did what I should have done when you were 10. 7 years. Maeve's voice was hollow. "You've been sober for 7 years and you never called." I was ashamed. And by the time the shame stopped being bigger than the need to apologize, I figured I'd waited too long. That you'd built a life without me and I didn't have the right to disrupt it. You didn't have the right to stay away either." David nodded. "You're angry. You should be. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. Then what do you want? For you to know that none of it was your fault. Not the divorce, not my drinking, not any of it. You were a beautiful, brilliant kid who deserved so much better than what I gave you. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, baby girl. Baby girl. The nickname he'd used when she was small, before everything fell apart. Maeve made a sound. Half sob, half gasp. Her knees buckled. Owen caught her. Held her upright while she fought to breathe through tears that had been building for decades. I hate you, she whispered. I hate that you waited until now. I hate that I still want your approval even after everything. I hate that part of me is still 10 years old and crying in the woods because her daddy doesn't love her enough to stay sober. I love you. David's voice broke. I've always loved you. I just loved alcohol more. And by the time I figured out how to love you properly, you were gone. Maeve walked to the bed. Stood looking down at her father, this stranger who shared her eyes. I'm a therapist now, she said. I work with kids in foster care. Kids whose parents abandoned them. I spend every day trying to fix what people like you break. You turned your pain into purpose. That's more than I ever did. I had help. Good people who showed up when you didn't. She glanced back at Owen. He nodded slightly. This is Owen, she said. He's important to me. David looked at Owen with a father's instinct that apparently survived decades of estrangement. You taking care of my girl? I'm trying to, Owen said honestly. Don't make my mistakes. Don't let work or fear or anything else come between you. He gestured weakly at himself in the hospital bed. This is what happens when you wait too long to choose what matters. The monitor next to David's bed beeped steadily. Machines keeping a failing heart alive. I need time, Maeve said. To process this. To figure out what I can give you. I know. And I'm grateful you came at all. I didn't come for you. I came for me. For the closure I need. That's fair. Maeve stood there for another moment. Then, without warning, she leaned down and kissed her father's forehead. Goodbye, Dad. Not I love you. Not forgiveness. Just goodbye. She turned and walked out of the room before he could respond. Owen followed. Found her in the stairwell, collapsed against the wall, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. He sat next to her on the cold concrete steps. Pulled her against his chest. Let her cry, for the father she'd lost when she was 10, for the years stolen by his addiction, for the girl who'd waited in the woods for someone who never came. I'm so angry, she gasped between sobs. I'm so angry at him and at myself for still caring. You're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to care. They're not mutually exclusive. He doesn't deserve my forgiveness. Probably not. But maybe you deserve the freedom of giving it anyway. Not for him. For you. She pulled back, looked at him with red, swollen eyes. How are you so good at this? I had a good teacher. He wiped tears from her cheeks. Someone who taught me that understanding pain doesn't mean accepting it. That you can acknowledge someone's wounds and still hold them accountable for how they hurt you. I said that to you. Repeatedly. She laughed through her tears. Pressed her forehead against his shoulder. They sat in that stairwell for 20 minutes while Maeve's breathing slowly steadied. I don't know if I can forgive him, she said finally. You don't have to decide today. What if he dies before I figure it out? Then he dies. And you live with whatever you decided. There's no perfect answer here. Maeve nodded against his chest. Take me home. Pittsburgh or Philadelphia? Philadelphia. Where you are. Something in Owen's chest expanded. Okay. They drove back in silence that felt different than the drive there. Lighter somehow. Like a wound had been drained of poison even if it wasn't healed yet. Halfway home, Maeve's phone rang. The hospital. Her father had arrested shortly after they left. They'd brought him back, but it was close. He wants to know if you'll come back, the nurse said. If not now, maybe tomorrow. He has more he wants to say. Maeve looked at Owen. What do I do? What do you want to do? I want to walk away. Protect myself. Never look back. Okay. But I also I want to try. Even if it's hard. Even if he doesn't deserve it. Because maybe I deserve the chance to choose differently than he did. Owen took her hand. Then we go back tomorrow. Together. You have work. Work can wait. Owen. Maeve. Let me show up. Let me prove that someone can choose you over everything else. Please. Her eyes filled again. She nodded. We'll go back tomorrow, she told the nurse. When she hung up, she leaned her head on Owen's shoulder. I'm terrified, she whispered. Me too. But we'll be terrified together. They drove the rest of the way home in the dark, hands linked, both thinking about fathers and promises and second chances that came too late or maybe, impossibly, just in time. They went back to Pittsburgh the next morning. And the morning after that. And the morning after that. For 2 weeks, Owen and Maeve made the 3-hour drive. They'd arrive by 10 a.m., spend hours in David Stevens' hospital room, drive home by evening. At first, the conversations were stilted. Painful. Maeve asking questions David didn't want to answer. David trying to explain things that had no good explanation. But slowly, impossibly slowly, something shifted. David told stories about Maeve as a child. How she'd organized her stuffed animals by size and held funerals when any of them got torn. How she'd once tried to save a baby bird and cried for 3 days when it died. How she'd read books above her grade level and corrected adults on their pronunciation. You were brilliant, he said. Sharp as hell. Scared me sometimes because I knew you'd outgrow needing me faster than I could figure out how to be what you needed. So you left first. So I left first. Maeve asked about his sobriety. The AA meetings, the sponsors, the daily work of staying clean when your brain told you drinking was easier. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, David admitted. Every day I wake up and choose not to drink. Some days the choice is easy. Some days it takes everything I have. But I do it because the alternative is dying alone having hurt everyone who ever loved me. You almost died anyway. I know. Turns out decades of alcohol abuse doesn't care if you get sober eventually. The damage was done. The cardiac team was clear. David's heart was failing. The attack had caused significant damage. He needed a transplant, but his age and medical history made him low priority on the list. Months, the doctor told them privately. Maybe a year if he's lucky and careful. Maeve took the news in silence, walked to the hospital chapel, sat in the empty space, and stared at the stained glass windows. Owen found her there an hour later. I don't believe in God, she said without looking at him. Haven't since I was 12 and prayed every night for my dad to come back and he never did. Okay. But I'm sitting in a chapel hoping for a miracle anyway. How pathetic is that? It's not pathetic. It's human. He's dying. And I just got him back. And it's not fair. Owen sat next to her. No. It's not. I'm so angry at him. But I'm also terrified of losing him. How do I hold both of those things at the same time? The same way you hold everything else. With grace you don't think you have until you need it. Maeve leaned her head on his shoulder. I'm tired, Owen. So tired of fighting through pain just to find more pain underneath. I know. The kids I work with, they keep asking where I've been. I've missed sessions. Canceled appointments. I'm failing them because I'm trying to save a relationship with a man who already destroyed me once. You're not failing anyone. You're taking care of yourself. It doesn't feel like care. It feels like bleeding out slowly while trying to convince myself it's healing. Owen wrapped his arm around her. Then maybe it's time to make a choice. Figure out what you can actually give him and what you need to protect for yourself. What if I choose wrong? Then you choose wrong. And you survive it. Because that's what you do. They sat in the chapel until Maeve's breathing evened out. Until the panic receded enough for her to stand. I want to try, she said. to build something with him in whatever time he has left. But I need boundaries. I can't come every day. I can't sacrifice everything else to be his deathbed absolution. Then tell him that. She did. That afternoon, Maeve sat by her father's bed and laid out terms like she was negotiating a business deal. I'll come twice a week. Wednesdays and Saturdays. You call if you need me urgently, but I can't be available every day. I have patients who depend on me. A life I've built that matters. David nodded. That's fair. And I need you to understand that forgiveness isn't guaranteed. I'm here. I'm trying. But I can't promise I'll ever fully let go of the hurt. I don't expect you to. And Owen. She glanced at Owen standing by the window. He's part of this now. If you want me in your life for whatever time you have left, he comes too. He's shown up for me in ways you never did. I need you to respect that. David looked at Owen for a long moment. You love her. Yes. Enough to stay when it gets hard. I'm here, aren't I? Something passed between them, an understanding between two men who'd both failed women they loved and were trying to do better. Okay, David said. Those are your terms. I accept them. The routine held for 3 weeks. Wednesday and Saturday drives. Hours in the hospital. Slowly building something that resembled a relationship. David told Maeve about his childhood. His own father's violence, his mother's depression, the poverty that had shaped him. I'm not making excuses, he said. But I want you to understand I didn't know how to be a father because I never had one worth learning from. Maeve told him about her work. The kids she saved and the ones she couldn't. The weight of holding other people's trauma and trying not to let it crush her. You would have been good at this, she said one Saturday. If you'd gotten help. You understood pain. You just didn't know what to do with it except drown it. Maybe in another life, David said quietly. Maybe I would have been the father you deserved. Maybe. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was something. Then Maeve's phone rang at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. Ms. Johnson? This is UPMC Mercy. Your father's been admitted to the ICU. You should come now. She and Owen were dressed and in the car in 15 minutes. The drive to Pittsburgh felt endless. Maeve sat rigid in the passenger seat, her phone clutched in white-knuckled hands. He's going to die, she said. And I'm not ready. I know. I thought we'd have more time. To figure this out completely. Life doesn't work on our timeline. I still hate him sometimes. For what he stole. And I hate myself for hating him when he's dying. Owen reached over, took her hand. You can hate him and love him and grieve him all at once. It doesn't have to make sense. When they arrived, a cardiologist met them outside the ICU. He arrested again. Significant damage this time. We brought him back, but his heart is failing rapidly. We're keeping him comfortable, but I need you to understand. There's nothing more we can do medically. How long? Maeve asked. Hours. Maybe a day or two if he's strong. Maeve swayed. Owen caught her. Can I see him? Of course. David looked smaller in the ICU bed. Machines everywhere. His breathing labored even with the oxygen mask. Maeve sat in the chair beside him, took his hand. His eyes opened. Focused on her with effort. You came, he whispered. Of course I came. Wasn't sure you would. No, we had Saturday scheduled. Didn't want to disrupt. Dad. Her voice broke. Stop. Need to say. While I can. He coughed. The monitor shrieked before settling. I'm proud of you. The woman you became. The work you do. You took your pain and made something beautiful. That's more than I ever did. You got sober. That's something. 7 years too late. It still counts. David's eyes filled. I'm sorry I wasted so much time. Sorry you had to parent yourself. Sorry I made you feel like you weren't worth staying for. I know. Do you forgive me? The question hung in the antiseptic air of the ICU. Maeve looked at her father. This broken man who'd shaped her in ways both terrible and profound. Who'd taught her through his absence what she'd spend her life trying to heal in other children. "I'm working on it," she said honestly. "And maybe that's the best I can give you." David nodded. "That's enough. You being here is enough." They sat in silence. Owen stood by the door, giving them space but staying close enough that Maeve knew he was there. "Owen," David called weakly. Owen approached the bed. "Take care of her. When I'm gone. She'll say she's fine. She'll throw herself into work. Don't let her disappear into other people's pain. Make her face her own." "I will. Promise me." "I promise." David squeezed Maeve's hand with what little strength he had left. "You found a good one. Better than me. Don't let fear make you push him away." "I won't. I love you, baby girl. Always did. Even when I couldn't show it. I love you too, Dad." The words surprised them both. But they were true. Complicated and painful and angry, but true. David closed his eyes. "That's all I needed to hear." He died at dawn. Maeve was holding his hand when the monitor flatlined. Owen was holding her. They called the time. Turned off the machines. Left Maeve and David alone for a final goodbye. She sat with her father's body for 30 minutes. Memorizing his face, this man who'd given her life and then disappeared from it and then, impossibly, come back just long enough to say the things that mattered. When she finally stood, Owen was waiting in the hallway. "He's gone," she said unnecessarily. "I know. I don't know what I am. You don't have to know right now." They walked out of the hospital into weak morning sunlight. Maeve tilted her face up, closed her eyes. "I need to plan a funeral for a man I'm not sure I've forgiven yet. We'll figure it out. There's paperwork. Arrangements. His apartment needs to be cleared out. We'll handle it together. Owen." She opened her eyes, looked at him. "You've put your entire life on hold for weeks. You need to go back to work. To your life. You are my life." "Don't say that. It's true. No one person should be someone's entire life. That's not healthy. Good thing you're not my entire life. You're just the most important part of it." Maeve's eyes filled. "I don't deserve you. You deserve better. But I'm what you've got, so you're stuck with me." She laughed. Then sobbed. Then laughed again. Owen held her in that hospital parking lot while she fell apart and pulled herself back together and fell apart again. When she could finally breathe without crying, she pulled back. "Take me home." "Pittsburgh or Philadelphia?" "Both. I need to handle his affairs here. But then I want to go home to our city. To our life. To the place where you keep your French press and I keep my records and we pretend your expensive coffee doesn't taste exactly like my cheap grocery store brand. Our city. Our life." Owen's heart expanded painfully. "Okay," he said. "Let's go home." They spent 3 days in Pittsburgh handling arrangements. The funeral was small, a few people from David's AA group, Maeve's grandmother, Owen. Maeve gave a eulogy that was honest without being cruel. "My father was a complicated man who fought demons I couldn't see and sometimes couldn't survive. He made choices that hurt me deeply. But in his last weeks, he chose differently. Chose truth over comfort. Chose showing up even when it was too late to fix everything. That's worth acknowledging. That's worth honoring. Not the man he was for most of my life, but the man he became at the end. The one who finally said the things I needed to hear, even if I wasn't ready to forgive them." Her voice cracked on the last sentence. Owen reached over, took her hand. At the graveside, Maeve dropped a handful of dirt on the casket. "Goodbye, Dad," she whispered. "I hope you find the peace you couldn't find here." They drove back to Philadelphia that evening in exhausted silence. When they got to Maeve's apartment, she collapsed on the couch and didn't move. Owen made tea she didn't drink. Ordered food she didn't eat. Sat beside her in the dark while the city lights flickered outside. "I don't know how to feel," Maeve said finally. "Relief. Grief. Anger. All of it. Probably all of it. He died before I could fully forgive him. That's. I'll carry that forever. Or maybe he died giving you permission to forgive him on your own timeline, without the pressure of doing it while he was alive to receive it. Maeve looked at Owen. How do you always know what to say? I don't. I'm terrified I'm saying the wrong thing. You're not. She curled against him. He wrapped his arms around her. Thank you, she whispered. For showing up. For staying. For proving that promises can actually mean something. You did the same for me. They fell asleep on the couch, tangled together, both dreaming of fathers and childhood promises and the agonizing work of healing wounds that never quite close completely. Spring came slowly. The weeks after David's death were a blur for Maeve. Clients who needed her, paperwork from her father's estate, grief that hit at unexpected moments. Finding his AA sobriety chip in his belongings and crying for an hour in Owen's arms. Discovering photos of herself as a child that he'd kept all these years, even when he wasn't part of her life. Owen stayed. Through the breakdowns and the anger and the nights she couldn't sleep. He'd moved his base of operations to Philadelphia, splitting time between his New York office and Maeve's dining table that doubled as his workspace. His board had concerns. His CFO had opinions. His investors had questions. He had one answer. This is where I need to be. By April, Maeve started feeling like herself again. The grief didn't disappear, but it settled into something she could carry without being crushed by it. She returned to her normal patient schedule. Started sleeping through the night again. Could talk about her father without immediately crying. One Saturday morning, Owen woke to find her side of the bed empty. He found her in the living room, sitting on the floor surrounded by photo albums. I'm sorting through Dad's stuff, she said without looking up. Figuring out what to keep, what to donate. Found these in a box at the back of his closet. Owen sat beside her. The albums were old, covers worn, pages yellowing. Maeve opened one. This is me at 5. Before the divorce. Look at Dad's face in this picture. He looks happy. Like he actually wanted to be there. The photo showed a younger David, arms around a small Maeve at what looked like a beach. Both were sunburned and grinning. I don't remember this day, Maeve said quietly. I've tried so hard to find good memories, and they're just gone. Erased by everything that came after. Owen studied the photo. Maybe that's okay. Maybe you don't have to remember it to know it happened. The evidence is right here. You were loved before things fell apart. That's real even if you can't access it emotionally. Maeve traced the photo with her finger. You think so? I know so. My mom died when I was 8. I can't remember her voice. But I have photos of her reading to me, holding me, laughing. Those moments existed even if my brain can't pull them up on command. Maeve leaned her head on his shoulder. We're both carrying ghosts. We are. But at least we're carrying them together. She kissed his shoulder through his t-shirt. I want to plant something. For Dad. A tree maybe. Somewhere in the city where I can visit when I need to remember the good parts instead of just the painful parts. Then we plant a tree. They chose a community garden near Maeve's apartment. Got permission to plant a cherry tree in the memorial section. On a sunny Saturday in May, they dug the hole together. Maeve's grandmother came, frail but determined. A few of Maeve's colleagues. Owen's assistant who'd become something like a friend during the months of him working remotely. Maeve read a letter she'd written to her father, forgiving him for what he'd done, thanking him for what he'd tried to be at the end, releasing both of them from the weight of carrying old wounds forever. I'm letting you go, she read, her voice steady. Not forgetting you. Not pretending the hurt didn't happen. But choosing to remember that you were more than your worst moments. You were sick and you got better too late, and that's tragic. But it's not the whole story. The whole story includes a man who got sober, who apologized, who tried to give his daughter closure even when he knew it couldn't fix everything. She folded the letter, placed it in the hole before they lowered the tree in. Owen shoveled dirt. Maeve patted it down around the roots. They stood back, looking at the small tree that would grow over years, long after this moment faded. He would have liked this, Maeve's grandmother said. David loved trees. Used to say they were proof that broken things could still grow. Maeve wiped her eyes. I didn't know that. There's a lot you didn't get to know. But that's okay, sweetheart. You knew enough. And you gave him more grace than he probably deserved. He was my dad. Deserving didn't really factor in. Her grandmother pulled her into a hug. You're stronger than both of us ever were. Your grandfather would have been proud. David certainly was. That evening, back at the apartment, Maeve was quieter than usual. Owen cooked dinner, his one specialty, a pasta carbonara his grandmother had taught him. They ate on the couch, some documentary playing that neither paid attention to. I've been thinking, Maeve said during a commercial break. Dangerous habit. She poked his ribs. I'm serious. Okay. What have you been thinking about? Us. This. What we're building. Owen's stomach tightened. Okay. You've been living here for 3 months. Your clothes are in my closet. Your French press is in my kitchen. Your grandmother's photo is on my bookshelf. You drive to New York twice a week for meetings, but Philadelphia is where you sleep. Is that a problem? No. But it's also not official. We've been in this weird limbo where we're basically living together but haven't actually talked about it. Do you want to talk about it? Maeve set down her plate, turned to face him fully. I want you to move in. Officially. All your stuff, not just a drawer. I want this to be our apartment, not mine with your things scattered around. Owen's heart hammered. You're sure? Terrified. But sure. What if I drive you crazy with my 5 a.m. running? I already bought earplugs. What if you drive me crazy with your Sunday vinyl sessions that last for hours? Then you learn to appreciate Etta James properly. He cupped her face. I love you. You know that, right? I know. I love you too. Which is why I want to stop pretending this is temporary or casual. It's not. This is. You're. God, why is this so hard to say? Because it's real. And real is terrifying. You're it for me, Owen. The person I want to build a life with. The one I want to come home to. The one who showed up when everyone else in my history disappeared. His eyes burned. You're it for me too. Have been since you touched my chest in that restaurant and said I'd promise to find you. I just didn't know I'd been looking for you my whole life until that moment. They kissed then, deep and sure and tasting like relief. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Maeve smiled. So you'll move in. On one condition. What? We get a bigger apartment. One with actual office space and a bedroom that fits more than your full-size bed and my anxious 5 a.m. energy. Maeve laughed. Deal. But we stay in this neighborhood. I can't leave my tree. We stay in this neighborhood. They spent June apartment hunting. Found a 2-bedroom brownstone apartment 3 blocks from Maeve's current place. High ceilings, original hardwood floors, a kitchen big enough for both of them to cook in without colliding. Office space for Owen, a reading nook for Maeve. Floor-to-ceiling windows that let in morning light and overlooked the community garden where her father's tree was planted. It's perfect, Maeve breathed when they walked through the second time. It's expensive. You're a billionaire. Technically, I'm worth. She kissed him. I don't care about the exact number. Can we afford it without me feeling like I'm living in your space instead of ours? Owen thought about it. We pay proportional to income. You cover 20%, I cover 80%. It's ours equally regardless of who pays what. That's not equal. It's equitable. There's a difference. Maeve studied his face. You've thought about this. I've thought about everything. How to build a life with you that doesn't make you feel like you're losing yourself. How to show up without taking over. How to love you without making you feel like you owe me something in return. Her eyes glistened. When did you get so good at this? I had an excellent teacher who helped me understand that love isn't about sacrifice. It's about showing up and choosing each other even when it's hard. I love you. I love you too. They signed the lease that afternoon. Moving day in July was chaos. Owen's assistant coordinated movers for his furniture from New York. Maeve's colleagues helped pack her apartment. Owen's CFO showed up with coffee and bagels, apparently invested in his boss's personal life after months of seeing him actually happy. By evening, the new apartment was half unpacked boxes and furniture in wrong rooms. Maeve stood in the kitchen, hands on hips, surveying the disaster. This is insane. This is life. I can't find my dishes. They're in the box marked Kitchen 3. There's a Kitchen 3? Owen wrapped his arms around her from behind. We'll figure it out. We have time. She leaned back against him. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. For this to be too good to be real. What if this is just good? What if we don't have to wait for disaster? That would be a first. Maybe we're due for a first. Maeve turned in his arms. Promise me something. Anything. When things get hard, and they will get hard, we don't run. We don't default to old patterns. We stay and figure it out like adults who've done the work to be better. I promise. I'm serious, Owen. I can't survive losing you. So if you're going to leave eventually, tell me now before I'm in any deeper. He tilted her face up. I'm not going anywhere. I promised to find you one day. I found you. I'm keeping you. That's dangerously possessive language. Good thing you're a therapist. You can help me work on it. She laughed. Kissed him. I'm going to hold you to that promise. Good. I intend to keep it. By August, they'd settled into a rhythm. Owen worked from the home office 4 days a week, went to New York one day. Maeve saw patients on her normal schedule, kept Saturdays sacred for them. They cooked dinner together most nights. Fell asleep reading in bed. Woke to Owen's 5 a.m. alarm and Maeve's grumbling that eventually turned into her joining him for coffee before he ran. Sunday mornings were vinyl sessions, cleaning and cooking while Etta James or Otis Redding or Mary J. Blige filled the apartment. It was domestic and routine and everything neither of them had believed they could have. One Sunday in September, Owen was making coffee when his phone rang. His grandmother's lawyer. He answered, confused. His grandmother had died almost a year ago. Everything had been settled. Mr. Mitchell, I have a letter your grandmother instructed me to deliver 1 year after her death. I'm sending it over now. Owen hung up. Checked his email. Found a scanned document. He opened it. My dearest Owen, if you're reading this, I've been gone a year. I hope you've forgiven me for meddling. I know you're probably angry that I orchestrated that blind date without your full knowledge. But I couldn't leave this world without trying one last time to give you what you've always needed but were too scared to reach for. Someone who sees you. I knew Maeve was special from the first time I met her grandmother. Eleanor told me about her granddaughter who spent her life fixing broken children because she'd been a broken child herself. I thought of you. My brilliant, successful, deeply lonely grandson who'd built walls so high no one could scale them. I thought maybe two people who understood pain could understand each other. I was right, wasn't I? I hope I was right. If I wasn't, if you're reading this having never called Maeve or having called and decided she wasn't worth the risk, then I'm disappointed. Not in you, never in you. But disappointed that you chose safety over the possibility of being loved completely. But if I was right, if you're reading this having built something real with her, if you've let her see the parts of you that are scared and broken and still worthy of love, then I'm at peace. Whatever you decide to do next, do it because it scares you in the best way. Do it because it's the hardest, bravest choice you could make. Do it because that little boy who promised to find a hurting girl in the woods would be proud of the man who kept that promise. Love always, Grandma. Owen read the letter 3 times. Maeve found him standing in the kitchen, coffee forgotten, tears streaming down his face. What's wrong? She rushed over. He handed her the phone. She read the letter. Looked up at him with understanding. She knew, Maeve whispered. She knew we'd need this. 1 year later when the grief had settled and we'd built something real. She knew we'd need permission to keep building. Owen pulled out a small box from the pocket of the jacket hanging by the door. He'd bought it 3 weeks ago, had been carrying it around like a talisman, waiting for the right moment. His grandmother's letter felt like a sign. He dropped to one knee in their kitchen with its mismatched dishes and expensive French press and the smell of Sunday morning coffee. Maeve Johnson. Her hand flew to her mouth. 28 years ago, a 12-year-old boy made a promise to a 10-year-old girl. He said he'd find her one day. That they'd both be okay. His voice cracked. I found you. And we're both okay. Better than okay. We're everything I didn't know I was allowed to want. Owen. Let me finish. Please. He took a breath. You've taught me that love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up even when it's hard. Staying even when it's easier to run. Choosing each other even when fear tells us to choose safety. He opened the box. A simple ring. Sapphire because she'd once mentioned loving how they looked like midnight sky. Marry me. Not because we're perfect or because we've figured everything out, but because we're better together than apart. Because I want to spend the rest of my life keeping that promise. Choosing you. Building something that's ours. Maeve was crying. That's not a question. Maeve Johnson, will you marry me? She dropped to her knees in front of him. Cupped his face. Yes. Obviously yes. You ridiculous man who drove 3 hours every weekend and stayed through my father's death and planted a tree in a community garden. Yes. He slid the ring on her finger. It fit perfectly. They kissed on the kitchen floor while Jill Scott played from the record player and morning light cut through the windows, and somewhere in the city, a cherry tree grew. 2 years later. Maeve stood under the cherry tree in full bloom, her hand resting on her pregnant belly. You would have liked her, she said quietly to her father's tree. She has your eyes. The sonogram tech said so. I'm not sure how she can tell from a grainy photo, but I'm choosing to believe her. Owen approached with 2 cups of coffee, moved slowly to accommodate her 8-month pregnant waddle. Talking to the tree again? It's therapeutic. You're a therapist. Everything is therapeutic to you. She took the coffee. Decaf. She mourned her caffeine habit daily. How was the meeting? Good. Great, actually. The board approved the new mentorship program. Owen had transformed his company over the past 2 years, established a foundation for at-risk youth, created paid internships for kids aging out of foster care, partnered with organizations like the one Maeve worked for to provide job training and support. Your grandmother would be proud, Maeve said. Yours too. They stood under the blooming tree, watching families tend their garden plots. The city hummed around them, alive and imperfect and home. Think she'll like Philadelphia? Owen asked, his hand joining Maeve's on her belly. She better. We're not moving. Never. Their daughter kicked. Hard. Both of them felt it. Maeve laughed. She's going to be trouble. With us as parents. Absolutely. Fair point. They walked slowly back to their apartment, hands linked, their shadows stretching behind them in the spring sunlight. 28 years after a promise was made in the woods, 2 kids who'd survived their broken childhoods were building something whole. Not perfect. Never perfect. But real. And chosen. And enough. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.